Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I'm gonna just dance it out for a moment, waiting for some people to hop on and join me. Good evening. Good evening. I love that Instagram tells me like, hang on, we're telling more followers to join you live. I love that. Oh, LinkedIn is telling me too. Yay! Like people are being told. Okay. So good evening. Welcome. Jessa Carter, the peaceful billionaire here. And I am joining you this evening from New Jersey. I'm going to be away for I don't know how long yet. However long I end up deciding to be away. Hey Bob, good evening, welcome. Joining you from New Jersey this evening. And I am going to just dive right in to the power of five. To the power of five. For those of you who know, if you've caught me live before, if you see me looking back and forth between cameras, hey Daniel, welcome, good evening. If you see me looking back and forth between cameras, I am live on Instagram from my phone, and I am live on StreamYard to 3 platforms from my laptop. So when you see me looking back and forth, it's not because I'm not. It's not because I'm doing other things or sending text messages. I'm just literally live from 2 different devices. So I'm looking back and forth so that I can be looking in the camera on both periodically. And so I'm just going to go ahead and dive in this evening to the power of 5. Because the power of 5 is so powerful, and it is something that is available to each and to each and every one of you, should you choose, right? Should you choose to implement the power of 5 in your life. And so the power of 5 is referring to the 5 people that you spend the most time with. But I think what I don't ever hear, I'm going to start with the 6th person in the power of 5. And the 6th person in the power of 5 that most people don't talk about is you, right? Because part of the power of 5 is you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's the power of 5. However, the person that you spend the most time with is who? Any ideas? Give me some answers in the chat. Who's the person that you spend the absolute most time with? Who is it? Any takers? Tell me in the comments. The person that you spend the most time with is yourself. That's number 1. That's the number 1 person that you spend the absolute most time with. So that is why you are extraordinarily important in this equation. So what that means is that the internal dialogue that is taking place, that the conversations that are taking place inside, right in between your ears, right inside of your mind, inside of this $27 billion asset that you already own, right? And that conversation is being powered by 27 billion kilowatts of power. So I always am leaning into, how are you directing that power? Are you allowing that 27 billion kilowatts of power that is available to you to believe and power the negative Nancy voice in your head, the saboteur, that inner critic? Or are you stepping in as the referee and saying, no, like, I hear you, thank you for sharing. However, that inner voice, that negative voice is telling you stories and is lying to you. And even though what they're saying, that negative voice is saying, might feel very real or true for you, because I know that it felt very real and true for me for a long time, that negative Nancy voice, that saboteur, that inner critic, that voice is not the truth. And so you have to step in And your conscious, your logical, analytical thinking mind has to be the referee in that conversation to say, no, negative voice. You can say, thank you for sharing, but I don't believe you. And you choose what it is what the positive opposite of it is, right? Because what happens is whatever that negative voice says, you have to analyze it and say, okay, well, if the negative voice is saying this, then let's say the negative voice says to you, you don't deserve that. You don't deserve to be rich. You're not worthy. You don't know how. You're too stupid. You're never going to get there. It's never going to take too long, right? All of this negative, I'm just going to call it horse crap that saboteur says to you, says some really horrible things. And none of that is true. But you've had experiences that if in fact that negative voice has been prevalent in your mind for majority of your life, that negative voice has attracted experiences to you to prove that the negative voice is right. So now the negative voice's story has been corroborated by experiences that prove that the negative voice is potentially correct, right? So that's why you've experienced things that make it seem like what that negative voice is telling you is real and true. But everything that the negative voice says to you is externally sourced. It is externally sourced, meaning that it came from somewhere outside of yourself. So whether that was from a parent, from a teacher, from a coach, from the news, from the media, wherever, right? Wherever it came from. But it was externally sourced either from an individual or from an experience. But nothing that negative voice says is actually real or true. So you have to step in and be the referee. And again, you can say, thank you for sharing, and analyze the fact that if that negative voice says, you don't deserve to be rich, the opposite of that is, I do deserve to be rich. I do deserve to be rich. And right. And so basically, if you're a math person, I'm a very analytical, science and math brained person. And so I speak to you, I speak often from that place. And so I like to analyze these things. I'm like, okay, well, listen here, saboteur, negative Nancy, inner critic. Like, if what you're saying is possibly true, there's a 50% chance that what you're saying is true. Potentially, statistically speaking, anyways. But there's also a 50% chance that the opposite of what you're saying is true. And what your referee, your logical, analytical thinking mind as the referee has to do is step in and choose. Step in and choose. Are you going to listen to the negative Nancy path? And what happens is that negative Nancy path might be, if that's the predominant voice in your head or has been for a long time, that listening to that voice and believing that voice is going to be the path of least resistance for you. It ends up being the path of least resistance for you. So when your analytical, logical thinking mind is being the referee, that negative Nancy voice seems like the way to go, because that's your path of least resistance if that's the voice that you're used to listening to, right? So it might seem like uncharted waters. It might seem like new territory to listen to the other voice, which I like to call Glinda the Good Witch, right? To listen to your Glinda the Good Witch voice who's saying, no, you can do it. You are worthy. You do deserve it. You've got this. Right? That might be you might be like, I don't know, like I haven't gone down this, that path is less traveled for me. But you're constantly have the opportunity to choose. So in the power of 5, so that is why, right, the power of 5 is so important. But right, like that person that you spend the absolute most time with is yourself. And how you speak to yourself, that inner dialogue, how you're allowing your conscious analytical thinking brain to speak to your subconscious mind is so important, because your subconscious mind has been is actually the superhighway of your potential. It's been running in the background. It's been recording everything since the day you were born. And it's your subconscious mind that actually creates your reality, right? That's projecting the reality that you're experiencing. So if you're not currently experiencing the reality that you would like, the change has to start consciously in that analytical thinking and that internal dialogue. You have to change how you're feeding your mind, how you're nourishing your mind, right? What are you allowing that inner dialogue in your mind to be? What are you listening to? What are the conversations that you're having? What are you watching? What are you reading? Right? Because your subconscious mind cannot reject, it can only receive. I'm going to repeat that. Your subconscious mind can only receive, it cannot reject. However, your conscious mind, your thinking analytical brain can reject things. So that's why it's so important for you as an individual to step in and be that referee and choose which one of those voices you're going to listen to. I call it a three-way call. If you haven't read my book yet, I talk about this in depth in my book, and I refer to it as a three-way call. Right? When we were young, I don't know if there's any other 80s babies here. Right? When we were when we were young, like three-way calls used to be the coolest thing on earth. That three-way call taking place in your mind, like 99% of the time, less cool three-way call, right? Less cool of a three-way call. And then just making sure, and part of the reason that the power of 5, right, is so important, is so powerful, right? Because you end up then becoming the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so remember I said, right, like, what is it also that you're listening to? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are the conversations? What is the value of the conversations that you're having on a daily basis, right? And are those conversations, are you around people who are positive, who are supporting, who are empowering? And are you having conversations about achieving your goals, achieving your dreams, right? Are you surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are on a similar path, who have a similar trajectory? And so if you're on that path of growth or change, you always want to surround yourself with 5 people who stretch you, who expand you, who ask you to rise up and be better, right? So, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable, right? It can be uncomfortable to really level up that inner circle. But that's part of that power, right? That power to choose who that inner circle is, who those 5 people are that you spend the most time with, that power is available to each and every one of you. Now, the second person, now remember I talked about, like, the first person that you spend the most time with is yourself. Does anybody know who the second person? So the second person is definitely in this circle of 5. Who is, other than yourself, right? Other than yourself, who's the second person that you spend the most time with? Do you know who that second person is, other than yourself, that you spend the absolute most time with? Anybody want to give me some ideas in the chat? Drop me something in the comments. Who do you think the second person is that you spend the most time with? All right, I'll spill the beans. The second person that you spend the most time with is your partner, right? Your partner, your spouse, whether that's a husband, a wife, a life partner, whomever, whatever that partnership is. If you are not single and you have a partnership, that partner is the second person. So within that circle of 5, if you are in a romantic partnership of any kind, that person counts. That person counts. So if you happen to be single right now, make sure when you're choosing that you choose wisely and that you choose accordingly, because that person that is your partner is automatically in your inner circle, in your power of 5. Right? And so that person is either going to support you, believe in your dreams with you, cheer you on in achieving those dreams, or they're going to weigh you down and they're going to make those dreams feel or seem impossible, right? And it's not to say that you won't still achieve your dreams if you're in an unsupportive relationship, but it can certainly be much more challenging. Right. So if you are, right, if you are single and you're on the market, you're dating, be sure that you choose wisely in that regard. But even if you're in a partnership that is less supportive, what's important is that you focus on yourself, because a lot of times if you really focus on yourself and you grow and change and they see this positive change in you, a lot of times they will kind of then start to be curious. So you don't have to push anything on them. You basically just lead by example, follow the path that you're on. And when they see the change in you, they're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. What is this bandwagon that you're on? And they're going to be more interested if you just lead by example and show them what's possible versus you telling them what to do, or telling them that they have to join you, or that they have to embark on this journey or this path with you, right? So there's that. But I also want to speak about and the reason that I speak about it like is the power of five. And so you also have to think about family members. Think about people that you talk to on the phone on a regular basis, because it might not seem you're like, oh, well, what do you mean I spend the most time with? Like, I don't see my mom every day. I don't see my mom that often. I only see her a few times a year, but I talk to her every day, or I talk to her once a week. And that might be that could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be a sister, a brother, an aunt or uncle, anyone in your immediate family that you're close with, that you talk to a lot. That person also matters. And I had to really learn the lesson of the power of five the hard way in my own life. And when I started on my personal professional development journey, I remember someone saying to me, when you're on this path, not everyone is going to understand. Not everyone is going to get it. There are going to be some people who may not stay in your life. And that can be hard, right? So meaning you might lose friends, you might lose some relationships with your family. Now that doesn't have to be the case, right? But that's a possibility. And it's not saying that you have to cut people out of your life to improve your power of five, right? It's not saying that you have to cut people out, but you do have to be mindful of how much time and energy you're devoting to spending with that person, and that you're devoting to that relationship. And for me, early on, one of the people that I talked to the most was my mom. And at the time, my mom was not in a great place with herself, and she was really, really unhappy with what, I'm not sure. But she was not in a good place. So anytime I would talk to her, she was not being supportive. So it didn't matter what I did, what I said, what I was working towards, who I was dating. None of it was good. None of it was ever good enough. None of it was ever right. And so it became really challenging the more and more I stepped forth on this path of growth, because she was seeing it. And she's from another generation, so she didn't understand it. And because she didn't understand it, she was very, very resistant to it. She was very negative to it. When I invested in myself for the first time, that was one of the most terrifying decisions that I have ever made. I was completely new to it, and that was a very scary decision. And but what I've learned about making scary investment decisions is that the ones that feel the most risky or the most scary are tend to be the ones that reap the most rewards, right? Especially if that's your mindset around it. If you have this positive, okay, like I'm going to do this, and it's it's going to be good, but you have to trust that risk is going to lead to an even greater reward, and it certainly has, right? So investing in myself is by far the absolute best investment that I've ever made. And since I made that first investment in myself, I've continued to invest in myself more and more and more and more and more. But early on, like I said, my mom was from another generation. She didn't understand it. she was yelling, practically yelling at me that I should you need to talk to your financial advisor about this. And I was like, Mom, if I felt like I needed to talk to my financial advisor about this, I would. However, I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. So it was just really, really challenging, um, and so things continued to kind of spiral and get worse, and got to a place that things became extremely toxic. And what I mean by that is she would send me text messages that were absolutely awful, um, extremely berating, detrimental, and that was not my mom. I mean, that was at least that was not the mom who raised me. I mean, my mom raised me, um, to be strong, to be independent, to never let people treat me poorly. She raised me that with the saying, you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you, and don't ever allow anyone to treat you poorly. Um, and I was the epitome of that. I had never allowed anyone to treat me poorly. So when I ended up in a situation where my own mother was treating me poorly, that was new. Like that was new for me. And I didn't know. I didn't really know what to do. And so my approach was always to be the bigger person. So I would either respond to her with a very loving message or not at all, right? Because sometimes if you can't say anything nice, you just shouldn't say anything at all. So sometimes there was just nothing that could be said. And so I just wouldn't say anything for that reason. Um, but it continued to become more and more toxic to the point that, at one point it was completely threw me off balance, even with all of the tools that I felt like I had in my tool belt, all of the tools that I had developed at that point to stay grounded, to stay in my center, to stay calm, to navigate through things, in a really calm and grounded and peaceful way. Whew, well, a parent can a parent can a parent can certainly disrupt that. And so there were some things that she said that were really, really hurtful, and it really kind of knocked me off kilter for about 3 weeks. Um, and she really unfortunately left me with no choice. So there was a period of time that I had to block her. I had to block her phone number from my phone, and I had to block her on social media. She had started to leave negative comments on like my love and light posts that I had been doing on social media. Now this is many years ago, um, and that was a challenging time. And I didn't know if our relationship would ever like recover or rekindle. I really wasn't sure. But in the early parts, I was just still focused on myself and the life and the path that I had been guided towards. And eventually we did reconnect, and we're good now. We're actually great now. But that was part of that became part of my story. That became part of my journey. And it ended up being the best thing that truly could have ever happened for either one of us, even though it certainly didn't feel like it in the moment or at the time for myself or for her. And I know that I think it was harder on her than it was on me. But it really, I don't see how we would have gotten to be as good as we are now had we not had that time apart. There were things that I needed to grow through, that I needed to learn, um, that I needed to believe. I think that part of my confidence and my belief in my own ability to, I mean, I was the kid that was raised, the sky's the limit, you can do anything you want to do, you can be anything you want to be, and I believed it. But I can tell you that when my mom, when I no longer had that support from my mom, right? It was like losing like the wind beneath my sails, right? Or the wind beneath my wings. And I really started to doubt myself. Um, and so I know not everyone, for some people it might have been the opposite, right? For some of you, it might have been that your parent was very unsupportive when you were younger. And so you had to find that belief and that support in yourself. Or maybe you're still on that journey of finding that confidence and that trust and that faith and that belief in yourself and in your own abilities. Um, and and I thought that I had it, and I thought that I had it on my own. And when I lost that support from my mom after having had it, um, that was very jarring, because it then, like I said, then I doubted myself. I wasn't as confident in who I was or where I was going, and my abilities. And I had to rebuild that. So I had to rebuild that within myself without that belief or that support from her. And so ultimately I came out much stronger from it. um, and she had her own journey, and she had her journey, and so we both ended up in a good place, and our relationship ended up in a good place, thankfully. And I'm really not sure exactly how. I know what I did on my end. I don't know what she did on her end. We don't talk about it too much. It's not necessarily something that's easy for either of us to talk about. Also, not my mother or I strong suit to, pardon me, to really share or show emotion. um, but that's a story for another time. My journey with vulnerability and the struggle with vulnerability, which for me started out as the inability to be vulnerable, that's a whole different conversation for another day. But what I learned during that time, I want to circle this back to the power of five for you, because I know that these decisions, when it comes to people in your when it comes to like family, that navigating that power of five and choosing who those five people are, can be really challenging. And like I said, it doesn't always mean that you have to cut someone out, but perhaps you pay attention to how much time that you spend either around that person or talking to that person. And perhaps you just cut back on that a little bit in order to really move the needle forward for yourself. Um, but circling back to that, but what I learned during that time that we had apart, is I learned, and also, by the way, I do have her permission to talk about this. I do share a little bit about this in my book as well. And before my book was published, I read it to my mom, I showed it to her, I shared it with her, and made sure that she was comfortable with that being something that was available for other people to see and hear and read, and for me to talk about, because I told her this was not an easy thing, and other people go through this too. But I want I want to be respectful of you, and I want your permission, to be able to talk about this now. So just so you know, I do have her permission and her blessing to be able to share about that challenge that we had, and that we were able to navigate, and thankfully end up on the other side of, and overcome. But what I learned during that time is I learned how much one negative person, or one negative toxic relationship in your life could really, really slow you down and hold you back. Because this was crazy, because once I cut cut off communication with her, all of these amazing things started happening. All of these opportunities, all of these like incredible things started happening for me, and I was like, what is going on? I'm like, I'm cool with it, but what is going on? And then during the period of time that we weren't talking, we reconnected briefly. And she was just still being like, it just still wasn't good. So I did have to cut off communication again because things were just still not good. And in that short period of time that we were talking again, when things weren't good, like opportunities started falling away, things started closing off. And I was like, what? Like the first time I thought it was a fluke, truly, truly. The first time I thought it was a fluke. And then the second time I was like, okay, well, it was too hurtful, too toxic for me. So I closed it off again. And when I stopped the communication again, all these opportunities and things started showing up again. And I was like, what in the world? So that was when I really, really, really started to understand. And because she had raised me, you teach people how to treat you, and I had never allowed people to treat me poorly, um, I didn't really have any like negative or toxic relationships in my life up until when it ended up becoming that way with my mom. And so it was only because of that distance, of that separation, of that period of time. Hey Alan, welcome. It was only because of that period and duration of time apart that I was able to see and really experience how powerful the power of five is, and how significantly even one unsupportive or negative or toxic relationship can be in your life. And that is personally, that is professionally, um that is personally, that is professionally, that is spiritually, that is emotionally, right? So energetically speaking, speak to you from an energetic perspective, right? Because everything is energy. And from an energetic perspective, right? One unsupportive, one negative, one toxic relationship is so potent. It's so potent because it is slowing you down, it is holding you back, it is lowering your vibration, it is lowering your frequency, it is diminishing you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and professionally, right? So it's really slowing you down and holding you back, just in really every way. And so that really is why, right? Why the power of five is so potent. It's so valuable. I hope that none of you have to navigate that in the way that I did. But if you do, know that you're not alone, right? You are not alone in that sometimes you have to take a break from certain people or from certain relationships in order for that relationship to grow and heal. But just so that you know that what can happen, and how quickly things can shift and change for you in a positive direction, just by shifting and getting rid of even one negative, toxic, or unsupportive relationship. Because remember, not every unsupportive relationship is necessarily toxic, right? Not every negative relationship is necessarily unsupportive. There's different, there's a spectrum there, right? There's a spectrum. But toxic is at the high end of that spectrum, and that is where you really, really, for your own well-being, have to sometimes make some really, really hard decisions, right? And that was the decision for me. I was like, I literally cannot do this. Like, my own well-being had become in such jeopardy. The relationship had become so toxic that my own well-being was severely being affected. And I was just like, this is not okay. Like I understand that this is my own mom, but like this is not okay, right? It is not okay for anyone to treat me this way, including my own mom and especially my own mom. So whoever that person might be for you, right? It is not okay for anyone to treat you poorly or speak to you poorly. To berate you, to beat you down, to make you feel small, to make you feel less than. That's not okay. It is not okay, and you don't have to allow that, and you don't have to choose that for yourself. Even though, like I said, even though I know that that can be very challenging and very challenging to navigate, and and if you need support with that, right, there are people who can be a support for you on that path. For me, it was something that I navigated on my own, because I'm stubborn. Because I'm stubborn, and that's who I am. But also because it was earlier on my journey, when asking for help or support was really still something that was really, really challenging for me, to the point of it was pretty well impossible for me to really open up, and let someone know what was going on, and ask for help or support. So I navigated through that on my own. Similarly, when my fiance passed away, which was long before that, that was also something that I navigated on my own, and I don't recommend that. Actually, but that was really the only way that I knew. um, Asking for support or getting support just wasn't a thing for me, at that point on my journey, and so I wouldn't even think to do that. um, Whereas now my approach is very different. Now, when I have significant transitions or significant challenges, I'm like, okay, who do I need to be in my support system right now? Like, for example, when I first left medicine, and like completely cold turkey left medicine, and dove in head first, and went full in on my business. um, One of those other like most scary times in my life. And thankfully, by that point on my journey, I was able to say, I need help. I need support. Who is that person? Now, that person for me ended up being one of my spiritual advisors, one of my spiritual mentors. Um, that was working with her. I think I worked with her one on one once a week for like 6 or 8 weeks. And that was really, really a foundational piece in the early part of that journey, that helped me navigate. So you can also think about that in regards to the power of five, right? That sometimes you might have to substitute, right? Like those five people, right? That power of five can fluctuate. And at that particular moment, one of the five people that I needed was her. Right now, that she's not still one of those five people. I love her dearly, and we keep in touch, right? But so she's still not like she was part of that power of five for a period of time when I needed her the most. Um, but she's not an ongoing or consistent part of my power of five. But you see how that works, and you see how that can be beneficial in your own life, thinking about, okay, well, where am I right now? What do I need the most support with? And who do I need to bring into my power of five right now? And I'll circle this back in a different way for you. So this year, um, this was also one of these scary decisions. This year, now I've been investing in myself, and in my own professional, personal, and spiritual growth advancement, for many years now. And it started out small. That very first time that I invested in myself, it was $10,000, which at the time felt like a lot of money. It felt tremendous. It felt huge. Um, and this year, in a relatively short period of time, because of continuing to invest in myself, this year I was able to invest over six figures in myself and in my business. And I continue to invest in myself in an even higher and bigger way. So thinking of that power of five, right? That power of five for me was three private mentors this year, right? So this year, within my power of five, I have three private mentors. Um, and that has been invaluable for my overall um, personal and business growth this year. Um, so you can see how that power of five, how that changes, right? How that's going to evolve at different moments, right? If you're in a place of where you really want to grow and scale your business, then the alarm sorry, the alarm keeps going off on my phone and it keeps wiping out my Instagram video. um, but if you're in a place where if you're at a place in your business where you're really looking to grow and scale, right? You have to ask yourself, okay, what is the support that I need? Who do I need in my power of five right now that's going to move the needle the most, and move the needle the fastest with me, right? Because also understanding that coaches and mentors, right, they're not there to do the work for you. Right? You are leveraging their zone of genius into your own life and business so that you can get from point A to point B exponentially faster than you would have been able to on your own. Because no one can see their own blind spots. And so that mentorship is going to give you, right, give you that support, give you their zone of genius, their expertise. Now, I will say that's something else that I learned too, is even with even with really high level mentors, if you're and it is a little crazy to work with three at one time. And I am crazy like that. But there was a learning curve even with that. And part of me, if I had it to do all over again, and it's not because all of my mentors are not phenomenal, it's just because sometimes I feel like I'm not necessarily leveraging like the value and leveraging and really maximizing each of their zone of geniuses as much as I would be able to if I was only working with one or two instead of three, right? But what I had to learn in working with three mentors is also knowing their zone of genius really well and making sure that I was going to the right mentor depending on what it is that I was focusing on or working on and what it was that I actually needed support with. Because I learned that some of them are better at certain things. Like some of them are better at systems and organizing, whereas other ones are better with like relationships and like meaning like professional relationships and connections and it just very different, right? Their zone of genius is just very different. So that's also important to know. So like I said, so not because all of my mentors are not absolutely fabulous, they are, but I just sometimes I have wondered, I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm really getting like the max benefit of having a private mentor. I think two would have been but three might have been a little much. But I'm a little much, and so for some people, and that's okay. But that fits. So it's very fitting for me from a personality perspective. I've always been a go big or go home girl, and I freaking went big. And so, but it also pushed me to like when you say yes to yourself at that level. That's the other thing. I'll just touch on this and then I'll get going because I've really talked about this for much longer than I expected to tonight. um What was I going to say? Now I like completely lost my train of thought. Real talk live, right? Real talk live. It'll come back to me. What was it? Okay. Hey, brother. Hey, brother. I just completely lost my train of thought. So welcome to I've been live for 44 minutes now. I can't believe it's been that long. It literally flew by, and I had a thought that I was going to share, and it just completely poof disappeared out of my brain. So I guess my brain is getting a little tired. Yes, a little, but that's Jupy back there. Saturn is laying down next to me. So I don't know what that thought was that completely escaped my brain. So I apologize. I don't know what that thought was. But anyway, so just bringing it back to that power of 5, and knowing that your power of 5 will evolve, right? And sometimes, depending on what it is, where you're going, what you're focused on, what you're working on, where you are looking to have the most expansion in either your life or your business, that that you're choosing, right, that power, who's in that power of 5 wisely. And that you're also paying attention to the person that you spend the most time with, right? Yourself, that numero uno, that you're also paying attention to that, because this is one of my sayings, right? How you show up for yourself is how you show up for the world, personally, professionally, spiritually, romantically, and financially. Ah, brother, I'm in your power of 5. Let's go, right? I think I'm in a lot of people's power of 5, and I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful for that. So yeah, so that power of 5, right? And this is a superpower. Your power of 5 is a superpower that is available to each and every one of you, should you choose, right, to start to really pay attention to your power of 5. Who is in that inner sphere with you, right? And also making sure that you're not running on empty, right? How you show up for yourself is how you show up mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, romantically, and financially for others, for the world. And if you're showing up from an empty cup, the other people in your life are not getting the fullest of your love, of your time, of your energy, they're not getting the best of you if you are showing up from an empty cup. And so one of the things that I also talk about, and it really, really ties in with money too, right? Because if you are on empty, or even if you're on half a tank or empty, right, you are in an inner state of lack, right? You're in an inner state of lack, and you your cup is hella full due to your soul, brother. Yes, soul journey. Yes, brother. Yes, right. And so one of the reasons that I'm able to show up as powerfully that I do, and hold this space and hold this frequency, this $1 billion frequency, right? Just know that when you're here with me, that the space that I am holding for you, the frequency that I am bringing, the energy of this is so powerful. It's so powerful what I bring. And the reason what I bring is so powerful is because I am always showing up for you from a place of excess and a place of overflow, right? And so my excess and overflow is internal in my life. It started internal, and then I started to see excess and overflow in every single other aspect of my life, financially, personally, professionally, in my relationships, romantically, right? All of these places, when I started showing up from excess and overflow, I started to receive more excess and overflow in all of the other areas in life. And what's also really, really special about giving from a place of overflow and showing up in that place of overflow is that you don't deplete yourself. When you show up from a place of excess and a place of overflow, you're not depleting yourself. And that's the really cool thing. But if you're on half a tank or on empty, when you show up, you're lowering the tank, right? So if you showed up at half a tank and you're doing the things and you're living your life and you're going through, all of those things that require energy from you, and you're only showing up with half a tank, you're pulling from that energy. You're pulling from that energy. So you might have showed up with half a tank and you're leaving with a quarter of a tank. Whereas when your inner state of being is in a state of excess and overflow, and you show up with that excess and overflow, you have so much to give that you're never depleting yourself. And that is really, really, really a really, really, really powerful way to show up for others. And that same ability that I have to show up from that place of excess and overflow, that is available to you, right? That is available to you. So if you're not there yet, that's okay, right? Don't stress out or beat yourself up about that. But that's part of the journey. It's a place, right? It's a marker. It's a threshold that you can be like, you know what? I heard her. I heard what Jessa said, right? I heard Jessa say that there's an opportunity for me to live my life and to show up from a place of excess and overflow so that I'm not ever depleting myself. Hey there, is that a P Berry? I wonder, is that Pete Berry by chance? I wonder. Welcome. So I was just about to hop off. I think this was so unexpected. I think this is my longest live to date. So I will let you all get back to your day, back to your evening. If you just hopped on, I apologize. I've been live for quite some time now. So if you happen to miss this and you would like to catch the replay, you can catch replays on Instagram, but sometimes it's easier to catch the replays on my YouTube channel. So you can always catch the replays of any of my lives on YouTube at The Peaceful Billionaire. And what's beautiful about replays on YouTube, right, is you can increase the speed. So if I'm not talking fast enough for you, you can put it up to 1.5 or 1.75 or 2, depending on how fast your ears are able to listen and absorb. And then also on my YouTube channel, you can catch the Peaceful Billionaire Mission to Billions vlog. So I do a daily vlog entry in addition to my lives during the week. And that is my transparent behind the scenes journey, the highs, the lows, everything in between, of what is going on and what is required both internally and externally on this journey for me, having hired 3 private high-level mentors this year and having saying yes in some really big ways to grow and scale my business. And it is a journey, right? I am consistently doing the work. I am consistently working through the things that are the internal things that are required to get me to that next place externally, right? So what is required? I kind of just share that behind the scenes. What is required both internally and externally to create unprecedented levels of wealth and success in a short period of time. So you get that here and you get that there. So you have the option, whichever one floats your boat. They are different. They are different. And I'm always live on Fridays at 11:30 Eastern time. You can join me. I'll be dropping some diamonds, some wisdom, some pearls, right? More golden gems. and pearls and diamonds of wisdom for you and guidance and support. On Fridays, you also have the opportunity to celebrate your wins, no matter how big or how small. I'm going to be asking about your wins so that we can celebrate together, because what gets celebrated gets replicated. So I want to celebrate you, and we can celebrate together. And so we're raising that entire frequency all together, and supporting and celebrating each other's wins and successes. And you can also ask me questions on Fridays. You can also drop questions in the comments, and I will answer your questions. So that is all. That is all for this evening. That is all. I will see you tomorrow, and that is it. Bye for now. I'll see you soon. I keep hitting my camera on my laptop as though it's a touchscreen. It's not a touchscreen.